So we all know we are in a very crucial period of mankind. It is not a situation which is happening very frequently. After my birth in 1967, I have passed through many milestones. I have a mark for smallpox vaccination. Probably none of you will have. All of you, if you raise your shirt arm and see the left arm, you may not have a big scar which I am having because I was vaccinated for smallpox, which was eradicated from the world in 1977. After that, a big worry, big threat was HIV infection. Actually, when HIV infection started, everywhere, everyone was nihilistic. Okay, that's all, the world will go. At least all who are sexually promiscuous, they will be dying, this and that. But it didn't happen. Somehow the mankind, human race survived that epidemic. And after that, after 2000, few epidemics we had. Severe respiratory syndrome like SARS, Middle East respiratory syndrome like MERS, many and Zika virus, but none of them attained this proportion of a pandemic that is going on now, COVID-19. Actually, prior to this, in 1918 to 20, when the World War was happening, there was a peak caused by Spanish flu. It's called Spanish flu not because the origin was from Spain, but because that time till 20, the First World War was going on. So all the countries were not open. Actually, the alliance of England, both the allies, their army men were exposed to this flu infection, and they carried the infection to their native countries whenever they were returning. At that time, Spain was a neutral country. It was not participating in the war, First World War. So Spain had a free press. The press can report anything. So the press in Spain published and covered widely the flu pandemic. So it was called Spanish flu, and they say around nearly 5 crore were infected and 50 lakhs were dead. This is a very conservative estimate, considering the fact that data didn't come out because of World War condition. So, but at the same time, it's an opportunity also. If you consider, mankind has taken every hurdle on its path as an opportunity. Challenges are there, it's an opportunity also. So we have, most of the students like you have taken this opportunity, turned to e-classes and e-lectures, about which none were enthusiastic till recently. Coming to today's topic, when I was asked to speak about some cancer topic, I chose to speak on cancer thyroid first, because it's probably one among the most common cancers. It's 5th in rank now, and according to estimate, it will be 2nd commonest cancer by 2030 among females, and male it will be little lower rank. That was one reason. Many of you may encounter cancer thyroid in your lifetime. A few years back, I operated on a young medico. She was very jittery. She had cancer thyroid. Another reason I started with this disease is, being a surgeon, to be proud of my treatment, I should choose one disease that will be cured by only surgery, nothing else, no radiotherapy, no chemotherapy. So cancer thyroid is one such condition which will be cured by exclusively by surgery most of the times. So these are the few reasons I chose to speak on cancer thyroid today. As you all know, the thyroid gland is very obvious. The disease of, unlike pancreas or esophagus or some retroperitoneal organ or some intrathoracic organ like thymus, lung, the cancer is thyroid. The thyroid is very obvious organ. If you look at a male or female, you can't miss the individual's neck, and any small thyroid swelling will be obvious to you. And this individual may also, by looking at mirror, they will be finding it very easily. So it is a disease. It's an organ which can't miss your notice. Actually, it is we who ignore it. Actually, some 5 years ago, I consulted one lady consulted me. She was mother-in-law of an anesthetist. She came to me with a neck swelling, and according to her, the swelling was present since she was pregnant with this girl, that is who is married to this anesthetist. At that time itself, she was having this swelling, and at that time itself, someone have done node biopsy for this lady, and it was proved to be papillary carcinoma thyroid. So minimum her daughter's age is 25, and when she was in the womb of her mother, the mother had metastatic cancer thyroid, that is metastasizing to node, and without any treatment, the mother has survived more than 25 years. And even she didn't get treatment from me. She defaulted. Probably she is doing well without any treatment. That is one extreme of cancer thyroid. That is well differentiated thyroid cancers. This is a group of cancers which contains number 1, papillary thyroid cancer. Number 2, follicular thyroid cancer. Number 3, Hürthle cell cancer. All these cancers, they belong to well differentiated thyroid cancers, and they arise from thyroid follicular epithelium. Thyroid, it's an organ like a shield around trachea. It's a butterfly shaped, around 25 gram max in its weight, and it's one of the biggest endocrine gland in the body. It is controlled from above by thyroid stimulating hormone, and it has a lot of effector organs that you will be reading in your physiology book. And anatomically, thyroid gland is very important and very notorious, because if it is not associated with recurrent laryngeal nerve, external laryngeal nerve, forget about esophagus and trachea, every surgeon will be doing thyroid surgery like sebaceous cyst. But for recurrent laryngeal nerve and external laryngeal nerve, thyroid surgery is very easy. But the close proximity of recurrent laryngeal nerve on both sides and external laryngeal nerve on both sides, they are very close, particularly to the upper part of the thyroid gland, upper lobe. And notoriously, the blood supply of thyroid gland, superior thyroid artery and inferior thyroid artery, both run very close to the nerves. The superior thyroid artery and its branches, they are very closely related to superior laryngeal nerve and its branch external laryngeal nerve, which supplies cricothyroid muscle, which is the tensor of vocal cord. And if you injure external laryngeal nerve, high-pitched voice like a singer, that will be lost. And the other nerve, recurrent laryngeal nerve, it is from down, and it is closely related to inferior thyroid artery, the other blood supply. And the relationship is very variable. The inferior thyroid artery may pass superficial to the nerve, deep to the nerve, or the nerve may pass in between the branches of inferior thyroid artery. So when you attempt to remove the gland, naturally you will be controlling the bleeding. So when you control the bleeding, naturally you may injure the nerves. And if you injure external laryngeal nerve, there will be husky nasal voice, some little aspiration of liquids will be there, and high pitch sound will be lost. And if the recurrent nerve is totally out, one side vocal cord will be paralyzed, and the patient will have hoarseness of voice. If both sides are injured, the patient will have stridor, respiratory difficulty. So that is the reason thyroid gland is very important, and surgeries seems to be little difficult. So coming to the cancers of thyroid, as I already told you, one group is well-differentiated cancers arising from thyroid follicular cells. That is papillary carcinoma thyroid, follicular carcinoma thyroid, and Hurthle cell cancer. In that, papillary carcinoma and follicular carcinoma, they respond to I-131 ablation, iodine-131 ablation. They uptake iodine. But Hurthle cell cancer doesn't take that much eagerly iodine. That's the difference between Hurthle cell from the other two. And another well-differentiated thyroid cancer is there. That is called medullary carcinoma thyroid. That is not arising from thyroid follicle per se. It is arising from parafollicular C cells, neuroendocrine cells, otherwise called, whether you call now or not, I don't know. When I was doing my MS surgery, we were reading about apodomas, amine precursor uptake and decarboxylase. It is one among the apod cell, neuroendocrine cell. So medullary carcinoma is otherwise called neuroendocrine cancer also. It can happen anywhere in the body, including pancreas and stomach and most of the GIT. So this is also another well-differentiated cancer. These four are well-differentiated cancers of thyroid. And the fifth one, anaplastic cancer of thyroid, which is very rare. Actually, 90% of thyroid cancers are papillary cancers. Nearly 5 to 8% are follicular cancer. And very rare, 1% is anaplastic cancer, some 5% is medullary cancer, and some 1 to 2% is lymphoma or sarcoma. Lymphoma can happen in thyroid gland, particularly in the background of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So apart from the four cancers, well-differentiated cancers, papillary carcinoma, I will repeat sometimes because you should be remembering in your life, that's why. So papillary cancer, follicular cancer, Hurthle cell cancer, and medullary cancer. First three arising from follicular cells of thyroid, the last one arising from parafollicular C cells. And the lymphoma, which arises from the lymphoid tissue of the thyroid gland, and which is usually happening, which is mucosa associated lymphoid tissue disorder, and it is called Malt lymphoma. Usually it is in the background of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Apart from these five, I told you anaplastic cancer, which is very worse. The outcome is very worse. And apart from this, rarely you can have sarcoma from the mesenchymal cells that are present in the thyroid tissue or in and around thyroid tissue. So if you are asked to enumerate what are all the malignancies that can happen in thyroid gland, you should write like that. Number one, cancers arising from thyroid follicle cell. In that, papillary carcinoma thyroid, follicular carcinoma thyroid, Hurthle cell cancer, and anaplastic cancer. First three are well differentiated, last one is poorly differentiated. And cancers arising from parafollicular C cells, another endocrine cell secreting calcitonin, that is medullary cancer. And cancers arising from lymphoid tissue, it is lymphoma, usually Malt lymphoma. And sarcoma, that is arising from mesenchymal cells in the thyroid gland. Apart from this, you can have any secondaries in the thyroid gland. Anything can metastasize to thyroid gland. That also you can mention. As I told you, papillary carcinoma thyroid is the most common cancer in the thyroid, nearly 90%. And it is the cancer with the best prognosis. And coming to etiology of thyroid cancer, the most common etiology is age. Elderly age with accumulation of lot of sporadic genetic events. Elderly age is more common for thyroid cancer. Actually, someone says, one Jatin Shah, an Indian famous head and neck surgeon, oncological surgeon in US, he says, if you remove all thyroid glands of everyone at the age of 60, 60% will have thyroid cancer. At the age of 70, 70% will have thyroid cancer. Maybe it's little exaggeration, but it is true. If you remove the thyroid gland of each and everyone beyond 50, many of them you may have occult cancer or non-occult cancer, that is clinically significant cancer. So that, in that way, it is very common. So age one. Number two, previous radiation. Previous radiation because of any atmospheric radiation naturally occurring. Like if you are living in a place near to a place where uranium or thorium is being extracted, or some radioactivity in industries where radioactivity can happen, or any person working in X-ray unit or CT scan unit without any precaution, then you can have thyroid cancer. Previous radiation is second important etiological factor. Roughly, if the individual is exposed to radiation in childhood, he may get thyroid cancer after 3 to 5 years. And he may get even 40 years later, he may get thyroid cancer. And the other way of getting irradiated is like industrial accident, like Chernobyl accident, where the nuclear power plant exploded. So number two, radiation. Number three, genetic etiology. Most of the genetic cancers, genetic mutations that happen, either they are transmitted from Mendelian transmission or occurring sporadically during the lifetime of individual. They are the third most commonest cause of thyroid cancer. Even though it is less than 10%, it is also another etiological factor. And some attribute iodine deficiency also to thyroid cancers. These are the etiological factors for thyroid cancer. And as I told you, Hashimoto's thyroiditis is supposed to be an etiological factor for thyroid lymphoma. Coming to genetic reason, there are some syndrome complexes associated with thyroid cancer that you should be aware of, particularly medullary carcinoma thyroid. Because it is not that medullary carcinoma is the only risk or danger for that individual. The associated cancers like pheochromocytoma or pituitary tumors, they escape your attention, and you may be landing yourself in catastrophe if you are not diagnosing associated with pheochromocytoma. That can happen around 50% of individuals in multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome, that is called MEN, MEN syndrome. Then you will be in catastrophic situation. You will be operating for thyroid, and patient's BP will be shooting, and you will be losing the patient on in the operation theater on the table if you miss associated pheochromocytoma. In that way, they are more important. So they are called multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome. In that, traditionally they describe it as MEN1, MEN2, and MEN3. But now, little bit, they have altered the staging, the classification, like MEN1, where pituitary, pancreas, and parathyroid, they are more common. You can have thyroid neoplasms also. That is MEN1. That is caused by some mutation in the region of 11q13. Don't bother about that. The secreted menin, that will be binding to menin receptors, leading to cascade of events intracellularly, stimulating the thyroid gland and leading to cancer. Second, more danger, this MEN1, it has some subtypes. And apart from that, MEN1 is not that much per se. The thyroid neoplasm is not very riskier, but the associated pheochromocytoma may be riskier. And coming to MEN2, multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome 2, it is caused, the genetic event will be RET oncogene rearranged during transfection, RET. You will be, the textbooks will be telling you RET oncogene, RET oncogene, RET oncogene, and you will be memorizing them. But what is RET? If you want, if someone asks to expand, you will be in trouble because you don't know. That is nothing but rearranged. That genetic material is rearranged during transfection. What is transfection? What is rearrangement? You go and refer. That is not the topic of today, and that may not be interesting for you also. This RET oncogene, the first one is tumor suppressor gene, MEN1. It is tumor suppressor gene. For MEN2 and 3, it is oncogene, proto-oncogene, and MEN4 again tumor suppressor gene. So MEN2 is RET oncogene. Here you have MEN2A and 2B. In MEN2A, you have familial medullary carcinoma thyroid. In both the things, medullary carcinomas are more common. In MEN1, 2A, you may have some medullary carcinoma thyroid or pigmented, primary pigmented nodular adenocarcinoma, adrenocortical syndrome, like that. Some pigmentation or some cutaneous lesions, lichen amyloidosis. All these things are subtypes of MEN1. MEN1, the patient will be getting medullary cancer little later, after the age of 5. And MEN2, MEN2B is little riskier because it can happen in by birth. Neonatal medullary cancers are more common in MEN2B. That is why the worst disease is MEN2B, where even a newborn child can have medullary cancer with metastatic nodes. And it is usually associated with Marfanoid habitus and some mucosal neuromas. Associated mucosal surface neuroma, ganglion neuromas will be there in MEN2B. Sometimes they call MEN2B as MEN3 also. Recently, they have little bit they are changing the nomenclature. They categorize the MEN2B as MEN3. And MEN4 is little rare, very rare. Very few cases, less than 30 cases are reported worldwide. And this cyclin-dependent kinase pathway is involved in that. Apart from this, one Carney's complex is there, where, as I already told you, the patient can have primary pigmenting nodular adrenocortical disease leading to Cushing syndrome, or the patient can have functioning pituitary adenoma leading to excess growth hormone and gigantism or acromegaly. This is Carney's complex. It is also very rare, not that common. Coming to, so these are the genetic mutations that is happening in multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome. In this, as I told you already, MEN1 and MEN4 are tumor suppressor gene. That means we are having 2 genes, every locus we have 2 genes, 2 loci. Like that, we will be inheriting the one loci from one parent. So if you are inheriting a mutated gene from father or mother in MEN1 and MEN4, that is, they are so tumor suppressor genes, which may not suppress the formation of thyroid cancer, but even then you may not get thyroid cancer because you will be having a wild type, that is called normal type of gene derived from the another parent. So the wild type, that is called normal gene. So for tumor suppressor gene to be effective and to produce cancer, both the alleles should be mutated. So only with genetic transmission you may not get cancer, but when the second Gene also mutated during the life span of the individual by some reason, by environmental reason. That is called Knutson's two-hit theory. One hit is intrauterine, your fate, that is the genetic mutation you got from your father or mother. The other hit is Knutson's second hit is during your lifetime. Again, another genetic mutation happening. That is because of some environmental factor. So this is necessary for you to develop thyroid cancer in MEN1 and MEN4 because they are tumor suppressor gene. But MEN2 and 3, they are proto-oncogene. One gene is enough. And all these are autosomal dominant. This is pertaining to genetic disorders associated with thyroid cancers. All these are very fancy, but you may not be encountering many patients in your lifetime because they are very rare. Among thyroid cancers, it is very rare. This medullary carcinoma itself is very rare. I told you less than 5%. In that, it is very rare. But even then, you should be knowing. Apart from that, lot of syndromes are there. Adenomatous polyposis colon, Cowden's disease. These are all, along with colonic cancer, you may have, or breast tumors, you may have thyroid tumors also. These are all some other genetic reasons for thyroid cancer. This is the etiology for thyroid cancer. Coming to pathology, I told you the classification, I told you already. In that, the classical feature of papillary carcinoma thyroid, that is hallmark of papillary carcinoma thyroid, is nuclear grooving and intranuclear inclusions. That will lead to some vacuoles inside the nucleus, and nucleolus will be pushed to one side, and you will be having orphan Annie appearance. Like in a dejected or desperate individual, in a vague, blank and depressive mood, the cornea will be thrown to the one end and the conjunctiva will be seen predominantly. So it will appear that the white of the eye is more and black is almost missing. Like that, it's called orphan Annie. We presume that orphans are always in dejected mode. That may not be true. But someone named this appearance as orphan Annie appearance. But that is need not be present always. But orphan Annie appearance is hallmark of papillary carcinoma thyroid. But any nuclear grooving, you should say nuclear grooving, you should say pathological feature number 1. Then you can say orphan Annie appearance. If you say orphan Annie appearance, you should be able to explain. And pile of coins, all these will be there in papillary carcinoma thyroid. Lot of lymphocytic infiltration will be there. Papillary carcinoma is usually multicentric. Both the lobes will be having. And they have some lymphotrophic tendency. So lymphatic spread is more in papillary carcinoma thyroid. Almost nearly 50% of individuals will be having lymph node metastasis if you are going to explore the lymph nodes. The other one, follicular carcinoma thyroid, it is little to detect because to diagnose, differentiate between benign nodule and malignant nodule, you should demonstrate capsular invasion and vascular invasion. To differentiate follicular cancer from benign follicular adenoma, the pathologist should demonstrate capsular and vascular invasion. Without that, you can't say. So that is the reason it is a little difficult to identify unless you are getting a big chunk of tissue for the pathologist. Usually FNAC, it will be little difficult to diagnose as follicular cancer. In FNAC, you can diagnose papillary cancer well because of the cytological features I mentioned, like orphan Annie appearance or nuclear grooving or pile of coins appearance. Many things are there. But follicular carcinoma, to diagnose on fine needle aspiration cytology or fine needle aspiration biopsy is very difficult. And Hurthle cells, Hurthle cell is nothing but degenerating thyroid cell. When the malignancy is full of degenerating cells, It is called Hurtl cells. It's a variant of follicular carcinoma. Only thing is it is not avid to iodine, and it will not take up radioactive iodine that avidly. So radioactive iodine ablation will not be that much effective. And the pathology of medullary carcinoma is very distinct because FNAC can very clearly demonstrate this amyloid stroma, that is calcitonin. Calcitonin will be deposited in the thyroid gland, and it will lead to amyloid stroma. Amyloid material will be there. You can get in FNAC, or this neuroendocrine cells also you can get in FNAC. Particularly if you wash the FNAC slide and analyze it for calcitonin, the secreted hormone, it will be positive in this one, medullary carcinoma thyroid. And lymphoma, you need a bigger chunk of tissue. Usually it is diagnosed in crooked biopsy. Anaplastic carcinoma also, you can diagnose by FNAC, but it is difficult, you may be doing crooked biopsy. Sarcoma, same thing, you need crooked biopsy. These are all very rare. And little more on pathology, as I told you, papillary carcinoma is a lymphotrophic cancer. It tends to spread by lymphatics. And follicular carcinoma is a little hematogenous spread is more. This is the difference between follicular carcinoma and lymphoma. In medullary carcinoma, both are very common. Both lymphatic spread and blood spread. And lymphoma, you know, it spreads by lymphogenous system. And in the pathology comes your diagnosis, pathological diagnosis. As I told already, a very simple office procedure of FNAC, fine needle aspiration cytology. Since it is equal to biopsy, some people they call it is FNAB, fine needle aspiration biopsy. They are very fancy and they're very sure that I can diagnose like a big chunk of tissue, like diagnosing on a big chunk of tissue. I can be very sure on diagnosis by just mere cells cytology. So they call it as FNAB. A mere 5 ml syringe is enough. You take the syringe, prick the nodule, and aspirate it. While aspirating, you go on passing through the tumor without pulling the needle out. And before pulling the needle out, you leave the aspiration and empty the contents of needle and syringe into a slide, make it a smear, and preserve it by isopropyl alcohol, either by spraying it or into immersing it, send it to cytologist or pathologist. They will easily diagnose papillary carcinoma thyroid 90% of times, because 90% of cancers are papillary cancers. And sometimes follicular cancer also, at least follicular neoplasm they can diagnose. So mostly 95% of times they will be able to tell you a diagnosis. That is the wonder of, you need not do any big biopsy, some anesthesia, excision, this and that. That's not necessary. Except to demonstrate vascular invasion and capsular invasion in follicular carcinoma, where you may need a bigger chunk or you may need a whole nodule. Otherwise, for that you should do crooked biopsy or thyroid, some sort of thyroidectomy you should do. This is the diagnostic armamentarium to diagnose thyroid malignancies. Some blood investigation you should know. For thyroid cancer, you should be doing 4 important biochemical tests in blood. Number 1, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, because if the TSH is very low, that means patient is in hyperthyroid state. The patient will not have, mostly 99% patient may not have cancer, because hyperthyroidism and the cancer thyroid, they are synchronously present only in 1% of individuals. So if the TSH is suppressed, you can assume that 19% of time the patient may not have thyroid cancer. At the same time, TSH is elevated or upper limit of border, then it indicates it is hypothyroid status. There is a non-functioning nodule is there, which is compressing the normal tissue, or the hypothyroidism leads to formation of nodule, whatever it is. then you should be very cautious, because 30 to 50% of time, the cold nodule will be associated with cancer. So for that, the TSH evaluation will be a road map for you. Because if TSH is suppressed, then you do ION31 scan. In ION31 scan, if the nodule is hyperactive, then you can assume that that nodule is not cancer. But even there, if the internodular tissue is active, then one of the cold nodule present along with the hyperthyroidism may harbor cancer in 1% of individuals. That is the exception. The second test you should do is thyroglobulin. Thyroglobulin is very important, because if thyroid tissue is there, there will be thyroglobulin. So if thyroid tissue is more, like in neoplastic syndrome, lot of metastasis, the thyroglobulin will be very much enormously increased. So thyroglobulin you should assess. Sometimes thyroglobulin will be absent or very less, but thyroid cancer will be there. That is because of anti-thyroglobulin antibodies. So you should assess the anti-thyroglobulin antibodies also. These three biochemical tests are very important in the, and fourth one is calcitonin. That is hallmark of medullary carcinoma thyroid. So any thyroid swelling where you suspect some form of thyroid cancer, 4 important blood tests you should do: TSH, thyroglobulin, anti-thyroglobulin antibodies, and serum calcitonin. In addition to that, if you want serum CEA, also carcinoembryonic antigen, that is also raised in medullary carcinoma thyroid. If you forget it, no one will penalize you. These are the specific tests for cancers. Apart from this, you should do thyroid function test to assess the thyroid function status. As I said, you can do a nuclear scan just to assess whether there is hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, and if it is hyperthyroidism, whether the nodule is active or the internodular tissue is active. For that you can do I-131 or I-123 radioactive iodine scan. Recently, there is whole body PET scan is available. Positron emission tomography, F18. That is also you can do. Particularly, it will be useful when the thyroid gland is not taking up iodine, and the iodine scan will be negative, but the thyroglobulin will be rising, go on rising. So by raising thyroglobulin, you will be coming to knowing there is a cancer in the body, but the I-131 scan is normal or not picking up. Then you can do PET scan, because the PET scan will be, the fructose is very avidly taken by rapidly dividing malignant cells, and the fructose tagged to radioactive meta-isotope, which is injected into the body and picked up by the any rapidly dividing cell, particularly cancer cells, the PET will be revealing. So PET scan will be very useful in thyroid cancers, except medullary carcinoma thyroid, where it is not that useful. There, DOTA PET scan will be useful. DOTA-10, one radioactive molecule is there. DOTA PET scan will be useful in medullary carcinoma thyroid. Apart from this, you can do ultrasound. Ultrasound will be very easily picking up neck nodes or thyroid nodule. Ultrasound is a wonderful investigation. When you are asked what is the first imaging you will do in exam, you should say, actually it told in reverse: I-131 scan, PET scan, DOTA scan, then I came to ultrasound. I did specifically because this is the mistake students do in exam. They tell the normal investigation at the last. Actually, in your exam, you should mention X-ray neck, AP and lateral view B2, mark the position of trachea, so that anesthetist, if at all needed, will be comfortable to intubate. That should be the first radiological investigation, should say. Before that, you can say ultrasound of neck, because ultrasound is now considered as part of clinical examination. And ultrasound will be very easily picking up because it is subcutaneous organ. So any high frequency ultrasound will be very easily become any small nodule in the thyroid gland. And it will say whether it is cystic or solid, because cystic, pure simple cysts are usually not cancers. So it will say whether there is nodule is present or there or not. It will say whether the nodule is cystic or solid. And if it is cystic, it is simple cyst or complex cyst. If it is simple cyst, it is not cancer. And by appearance of irregular hyperechoic nodule, nodule is classified as a discrete lesion in that nodule. If you are asked to classify nodule, then you should be able to classify what is nodule, thyroid nodule. It is a discrete lesion in the thyroid tissue that is distinct from the surrounding normal thyroid tissue. 2Ds, you remember. We should be fond of 2Ds. Discrete thyroid lesion that is distinct from the surrounding thyroid tissue. This is how you should describe the thyroid nodule. And any thyroid nodule with irregular borders and microcalcification, and when you measure the ultrasound in a horizontal position, it will be taller than it will be taller in appearance. Lot of things are there that will characterize the lesion as cancer. If it is simple cyst, it is not cancer. And the presence of absence of nodes, neck node, and whether they are metastatic or non-metastatic. Any oval reniform shape is non-metastatic node. When the node gets rounded up and loss of some this normal architecture, then there's some deposits in the cortex, then you should say these probably these nodes are metastatic deposits. So ultrasound is a wonderful investigation. It can pick up a thyroid nodule. It will say whether the nodule is cystic or solid. It will say whether it is simple cyst or complex cyst. If it is in that way, it can differentiate whether it is cancer or not, and it will assess the entire neck node. And by in the assessment neck node also, it will say whether the neck nodes are affected by cancer or not. So ultrasound of the neck should be the first investigation, should say. Then you can say X-ray just for anesthetic purpose. Then you can say CT neck, CT scan of neck, to assess whether the thyroid cancer is involving esophagus, trachea, or surrounding soft tissues. Then you can say CT scan of neck. And in very rare occasions, when the TSH is very suppressed, where you suspect hyperthyroidism, there you can do I-131 scan, because it will say whether the nodule is active or not. If the nodule is active, you can assume that it is not cancer, because thyroid toxic nodule and cancer to coexist is very rare, less than 1%. If the nodule is not active, internodular tissue is active, then you can assume that there is a possibility of cancer. And after that, PET scan you can do, DOTA scan you can do. This is the diagnostic test you can do for. Apart from that, for assessment purpose, you should. Are you all hearing or sleeping? Because in classroom itself, it is very difficult to assess whether students are sleeping or hearing. Okay, I'm just joking. Okay, no, just joking. So in between, I should ensure that you are all awake. So pathology and diagnosis over. Clinical features is nothing. It's a swelling. Usually it will be a swelling in the neck. Nothing else. And either patient will find it out, or his relative or friends will find it out, or some doctor will say, or just for some reason they will do ultrasound neck and they will find out the nodule. This is the routine. Sometimes if the thyroid gland is very big, the cancer is very too advanced, and it is infiltrating trachea, it is infiltrating esophagus, then the patient can have some breathing difficulty and swallowing difficulty. If thyroid cancer is involving the recurrent laryngeal nerve and the other external laryngeal nerve, the patient will present with stridor or hoarseness of voice. And if it is medullary cancer, because of secreted calcitonin, the patient may have diarrhea. And if associated Min syndrome is there, the features of pituitary tumors, features of pheochromocytoma like hypertension, features of pancreatic islet cell cancer, all these things can be there. This is regarding clinical features. Otherwise, it is usually painless swelling to start with. And it will remain like that. Sometimes patient may have lateral neck also, some swellings will be there. That is because of nodes. That earlier period they called lateral aberrant thyroid. That is not said so now, because any thyroid tissue in the lateral neck is neck nodes involved by thyroid cancer unless proved otherwise. Any swelling in the lateral neck containing thyroid gland is the node involved by thyroid cancer unless proved otherwise. So this you should be knowing. So this lateral aberrant thyroid is a misnomer nowadays. And the berry picking, removing all nodes one by one, ancient days, in the days of my grandfather, it's also not practiced now. And coming to management of thyroid cancer, I will say the first line of management of thyroid cancer, surgery. All thyroid cancers are managed surgically except lymphoma, which is very rare. And many a times anaplastic cancer, because it will not be operable. And sarcomas, even I have not seen in my lifetime thyroid sarcoma, yet to meet one. It's very rare. Except lymphoma, the mainstay of treatment of thyroid cancer is surgery, surgery, surgery. Nothing else is effective. At least for middle differentiated thyroid cancer, in adjuvant setting, you have iodine 131 ablation, radioactive iodine ablation. That also not curative. The curative potential is only there with surgery. And the minimum surgery you should do for thyroid cancer is total thyroidectomy. And it should be still more total if it is medullary carcinoma thyroid, because any left out thyroid, medullary carcinoma thyroid will be very dangerous and it will be finishing off the life of patient. So this is the treatment. So, but before that, if a patient is coming with a thyroid nodule, solitary thyroid nodule, then whether the solitary thyroid nodule is really solitary thyroid nodule, it may not be cancer. 70% of time it will not be cancer. If the patient is presenting with solitary thyroid nodule, lot of questions will be there. Number one, whether it is cyst or solid. Number two, whether it is really solid or there are a lot of nodules inside the thyroid gland. Only this one is showing up. Whether it is benign or malignant, whether it is functioning or not, cold nodule or hot nodule, lot of questions will be there. And the FNAC will be helping to differentiate everything. If it is cyst, it will collapse, but it will come to recur again, but it will collapse on aspiration if it is simple cyst. And when interpreting finely aspiration cytology, there are four possibilities. The cytologist will say your sample is inadequate. You have sent only blood, you have sent only clot, or the material is inadequate. I am not able to see any thyroid follicle cells. That may be one comment. Or the individual, the cytologist may say, yes, cancer is there. Or the cytologist may say, no, the cancer is not there, it is benign. Or the cytologist may say, indeterminate, neither this way or that way. So FNAC is a must investigation before proceeding on to surgery for any thyroid cancer, because proving it to be thyroid cancer will be helpful for you to manage. whether to remove the whole gland or not. Because it's very simple nodule, which is either symptomatic or cosmetically disfiguring, you can end up with doing only hemithyroidectomy. But there also you should be careful. You should suspect that hemithyroid specimen to frozen section. Frozen section means we will send the tissue to the, after surgery, we will wait in the theater, we will send the tissue to the pathologist. They will, one instrument is there that will be deep freezing the tissue to minus 80, 180 degree instantaneously, so that the cells will be frozen, and the frozen cells, when the tissue that is cut, sectioned, it is very easy. Immediately the pathologist can say whether it is cancer or not. So if at all you are doing frozen section, if at all you are doing hemithyroidectomy, particularly in very young age, where the suspicion of cancer is very less, it is wise to subject the specimen to frozen section. That is my advice as an oncologist. Coming to surgery for thyroid cancer, except for very rare occasions, like very young adolescent girl, where, because if you remove thyroid, even if it is not cancer, you should be replacing with Eltroxin. And very young lady where the possibility of pregnancy, lactation, this and that, you may not like to remove the entire gland. There you can stop short of hemithyroidectomy. Hemithyroidectomy includes isthmus of the thyroid lobe. You should not leave the isthmus. Always hemithyroidectomy means removing one lobe and isthmus, because any recurrence in the isthmus will be very ugly to see. So isthmus is usually removed, and any lesion in the isthmus may invade the trachea very easily. So removal of isthmus is part of hemithyroidectomy that we do very rarely. The lady is the woman patient is very young, particularly female, and you expect pregnancy, lactation, and the ultrasound says the nodule is less than 1 centimeter. If it is less than 1 centimeter, it is called thyroid microcarcinoma. Any thyroid cancer less than 1 centimeter is thyroid microcarcinoma. So in those scenarios, you can do hemithyroidectomy. Otherwise, you will be doing total thyroidectomy only for thyroid cancer. Total thyroidectomy means you will be removing both lobes with isthmus. The three important structures of human anatomy is, number one, as I said, external laryngeal nerve, that is a branch of superior laryngeal nerve coursing along the superior thyroid artery, loss of which will be paralyzing the cricothyroid muscle, which is tensors of vocal cord, and the patient will lose high-pitched voice, and patient may aspirate sometimes because the cords will not be closing snugly. The second one is inferior recurrent laryngeal nerve, loss of which will cause to lead to stridor if it is both sides. If it is one side, hoarseness of voice. And the third important structure is parathyroid gland. Parathyroid glands are embedded into thyroid tissue. Identification of parathyroid gland is very difficult. They say brown, this and that, but with the experience it comes. Even with the experience, it's difficult. Many a time, the blood supply of parathyroid gland is derived from superior inferior thyroid artery, and the parathyroid glands are usually variable in situation. Parathyroid gland, usually it will be along the posterolateral border of the thyroid gland in relation to recurrent laryngeal nerve, either anterior, posterior, superior, inferior, but lot of variations will be there regarding the position of parathyroid gland. Even in the superior mediastinum, it may present. So that is why they say during surgery, the first parathyroid gland you see, you should assume that that is the last parathyroid gland remaining, because you might have removed already. And the ischemia of parathyroid gland is very common. That is why the complications of total thyroidectomy, number one, superior laryngeal nerve, external laryngeal injury, huskiness of voice. Number two, recurrent laryngeal injury, hoarseness of voice or stridor. Number 3, loss of parathyroid gland, either by ischemia or by surgical removal, that leads to profound hypocalcemia and tetany. So that is another complication. These are 3 specific complications of thyroid surgeries. The other complications, I will not enumerate, bleeding, this and that. If you are very efficient, you can injure even brain while doing, say, thyroid surgery. That is your efficiency. I don't comment on it. But usually these 3 are more common. Usually after doing surgery, we come to know the exact staging. Even though by clinical means you can stage the, I think it's not very late. It's 7:30 only. Okay. Usually by clinical means you can stage the thyroid cancer. Nowadays the common staging is TNM staging, tumor, node, and metastasis. Staging upfront you can do, but pathological staging will be very accurate. In cancer, why should you stage? That will be why was stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, TNM, T1, T3. What is that funny things? Why we should know? And why the hell they are changing every 4 years? And we are made to read again and again. Staging you should be knowing very accurately, because number 1, what is the treatment you should give? If it is stage 4, no surgery, except there are complications. வீடே பத்தி எரியறப்ப அடுப்படியில போய் தண்ணி விடுவாங்களா என்ன? உடம்பே பத்தி எரிஞ்சதுன்னா there is no need for surgery, localized surgery. So to decide the mode of treatment and to decide about adjuvant treatment, whether the adjuvant chemotherapy, not in thyroid, other cancers, radiotherapy is necessary. For that you should be knowing staging, number 1. Number 2, any patient will ask you the first question, sir, what is the prognosis? How long I will live? What will be my life expectancy? Will the disease will come back or not? For that, you should know the accurate staging. Because stage 1, you can say in thyroid gland, 99% you will live. 99% disease, 90% disease will not come. If it is stage 1, you can say very boldly. If it is stage 4, you can't say that boldly. So to tell the patient about prognosis, the staging is very important. Number 3, you should communicate with your colleagues in the form of trials, clinical trials, various paper publications. Raghunandan told I am having 73 publications so far. Thanks to my students who are doing MCH under me, it has gone to 77 now. Now the era is publish or perish. One man, Fisher, he told, when assuming as chairman of NSABP in USA in early 20th century, he said, we believe God, all others should have fact, data. That means without data only we will believe only God. All others should produce data to believe. So now it is publish or perish. So to communicate with your professional colleagues world over, to publish your data, to assess your results, you need to stage the disease. Because you should compare, no 2 individuals are comparable and no 2 stages are comparable. So for that, staging is very important. And a lot of social issues are there, social ethical issues are there. The wife will come and ask, sir, when he will die and I can marry again? Or the husband will come and ask, when my wife will be dying and I can marry again? Or the children will come and ask my father when he will pop off and I can inherit the property. All those things you should answer. So staging is very important. TNM staging, I will quote, but you can find out in any textbook. T1 is less than or equal to 2 centimeter. T2 is more than 2 centimeter, not more than 4 centimeter. T3 is more than 4 centimeter. Perithyroid extrathyroid involvement may be there in T3, but not beyond strap muscles. Beyond strap muscles, involvement of rectolaryngeal nerve, superior laryngeal nerve, soft tissues beyond strap muscles, esophagus, trachea, except prevertebral fascia. All these things are T4B, T4A, and T4b is pretracheal fascia environment. N0 is no node, N1 is any node, any number of nodes, unilateral, bilateral, or same side or opposite side, one side or both sides. It is N1 only. And metastasis, M0 no metastasis, M1 metastasis. And the wonder of thyroid cancer is if the candidate is less than 55 years, it is TNM staging. There will be stage grouping, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. If the individual is less than 45 years, 55 years, all well-differentiated thyroid cancers will have only stage 1 and stage 2. There is no stage 3 and 4 for well-differentiated thyroid cancers less than 55 years. Not medullary cancer. Other well-differentiated cancers. So, accordingly, the prognosis also good. Only stage 2 has metastatic disease. Even that you call it a stage 2 only. So that much it is curable. So disseminated metastasis, that is stage 2 only. If the candidate is less than 55 years. More than 55 years, it differs. Less than 4 centimeter, that is T1 and T2, without nodal involvement is stage 1. With nodal involvement or more than 4 centimeter, it is stage 2. Extrathyroidal involvement beyond strap muscles, stage 3. Extrathyroidal involvement, prevertebral fascia, stage 4A. Metastasis, stage 4B. This is beyond 55. That's true for medullary carcinoma also. This is staging. So you can assess the staging preoperatively by investigation. You can accurately know that postoperatively by assessing the pathological specimen also. After surgery, for medullary cancer, there is no adjuvant treatment. If you are asked to say 3 types of treatment for medullary carcinoma thyroid, you should say 1 type surgery, 2nd type surgery, 3rd type surgery, nothing. For well-differentiated thyroid cancers, for microcarcinoma, that is that the tumor size is less than 1 centimeter, incidental, patient was very specific, you have operated. You can plan to observe also. The patient is willing and compliant. If the patient is ready to undergo investigations again and again to prove that it is not growing very fast, it is not spreading. Thyroid microcarcinomas, there is no adjuvant, no radioactive ablation, and even this Eltroxin, which is given after this one, thyroid surgery, even maintenance dose is enough. 1 tablet, that is 100 microgram, that is enough. Your thyroid suppression, TSH suppression need not be that strict. Can be even this 2 milli international units you can maintain for thyroid microcarcinoma. If it is little advanced, like stage 2 or stage 3, then stage 2 usually the surgery is not, stage 4 is not curative, but at stage 4 also. Adjuvant I-131 ablation, iodine 131 ablation is must. There they give 150 to 300 millicuries, nothing. They will give some drops, radioactive iodine drops. Only thing is they will keep the patient in isolation because patient's urine and fecal matter and secretions may have radioactivity and it will harm the others, medical personnel, nursing personnel or relatives. So they isolate the individuals for a particular period of time. Till then they will be isolated, but it is only swallowing drops. And this radioactive iodine will go throughout the body after absorption. And wherever there is iodine functioning tissue is there, either node or node will not be responding that eagerly, but wherever there is thyroid tissue and thyroid iodine uptake is there, thyroid uptake is there, this I-131 will be acting. So that is must. Number two, this thyroid suppression, TSH suppression, because no TSH, no thyroid cancer. So TSH, if you suppress, thyroid cancer will be suppressed. For that, you should give suppressive dose of L-thyroxine, L-thyroxine. That is usually 300 microgram, 3 tablets. You can assess by doing TSH assay. Ideally, if it is high risk individual, high metastatic disease, or a lot of nodes are involved, the level you should maintain is 0.1 milliunits. If it is intermediate risk, it can be between 0.5, 1.1 to 0.5. If it is good risk, even you up to 2 you can maintain suppression. That means you can give less dose of L-thyroxine. This is one second adjuvant. So adjuvant treatment is I-131 ablation, L-thyroxine. Usually external beam radiation is not given. Chemotherapy is not useful, except very rare situation where the secondary is not picking up iodine or I-131, and you are desperate, there you can irradiate external beam radiation can be given to that particular metastasis to palliate symptoms. This is for well-differentiated thyroid cancer. For anaplastic cancer, I told you, usually all anaplastic cancers are stage 4. All anaplastic cancers are stage 4. All lymphomas, the classification is different. Extranodal lymphoma, the classification is different. I will not deal now. It will come under lymphoma. So anaplastic carcinoma, all are stage 4. Usually they will not be operable, but even there, stage 4A means confined to thyroid gland. Stage 4B means it is out of thyroid gland, either to nodes or extrathyroidal tissues. Stage 4C is metastatic disease. Stage 4A, sometimes you may do total thyroidectomy and nodal dissection and cure the patient, but it's very rare. It's not that common. Usually anaplastic carcinoma, the patient will die within 6 months. And medullary carcinoma, you should manage aggressively, as I told already. While doing total thyroidectomy for well-differentiated thyroid cancer, whether you will remove nodes or not, that's a big question. In Mayo Clinic, they remove all central compartment neck nodes, that is from hyoid bone to arch of aorta. That is station 6 and 7 in neck node classification. That is between 2 jugular veins. You can routinely remove. We are also doing routinely, preserving acrolaryngeal nerve, parathyroid gland, and superior laryngeal nerve. We can do. Ideally, any total thyroidectomy should be associated with central compartment neck dissection, because going back again for recurrence and operating will be injuring the chances of injury of acrolaryngeal nerve, parathyroid gland, and superior laryngeal will be more. Very difficult. Re-operations in thyroid bed is very difficult. So for that reason, and these nodes are first echelon nodes. That is the first barrier for cancer, where the cancer cell may land without any clinically obvious, without being clinically obvious. You will know the exact staging, whether nodes are involved or not. So usually we will remove in well-differentiated thyroid cancers central compartment nodes. Some will not do. Early disease, no ultrasound detected nodes, they will not do. Microcarcinoma you should not do. Others also they will not do. But in medullary carcinoma, you should do always central compartment neck dissection, because you should be more aggressive. That is the difference between surgery for other well-differentiated thyroid cancers and medullary carcinoma. You should be always doing central compartmental nodal dissection. That is, you should be clearing all fibrofatty tissues and nodes in between 2 jugulars from the hyoid bone to at least innominate vein. This extensive, it's not very tough. Once you know neck anatomy, you will come to know. So that is a must. Lateral neck nodes. In papillary carcinoma and follicular carcinoma, if they are present, that side modified radical neck dissection type 3. That is otherwise called functional neck dissection. Neck dissection, we will remove all neck nodes from mandible to clavicle in neck dissection. That is classical neck dissection, radical neck dissection. There we will remove sternocleidomastoid muscle, internal jugular vein, and spinal axillary nerve to remove the nodes around them. This is called radical neck dissection for any head and neck malignancy. Even for thyroid cancer, if you do, we will not usually do radical neck dissection. If at all you are going to do, then you can omit the submandibular gland level 1, because the remote possibility of, unless there are big nodes in the level 2, we will not remove level 1. But usually in thyroid cancer, we will do modified radical neck dissection, where we will preserve all these 3, sternocleidomastoid, internal jugular vein, and axillary nerve. So this is called modified radical neck dissection type 3, preserving all 3 structures. That is otherwise called functional neck dissection. Functional neck dissection term is more used in Europe, not in US. And it's a very old terminology. Modified radical neck dissection type 3 is the apt terminology that you can use now. So any lateral nodal involvement in papillary carcinoma thyroid or follicular carcinoma thyroid or Hurthle cell cancer, you should do that side modified radical neck dissection type 3, where since it is thyroid gland, if there are no big nodes in level 2, you may omit level 1. For medullary carcinoma thyroid, some people, even without nodal disease, that side they do electively. For papillary cancer, prophylactic nodal dissection you need not do. No node, sir, but I have done surgery. That's not necessary for papillary carcinoma, follicular carcinoma, and Hurthle cell carcinoma. But many people for medullary carcinoma, subclinical metastasis will be there. There are more chances, 40, 30, 40%. And any recurrence, the life is out. Recurrent medullary carcinoma is very difficult to cure. If it is non-recurrent, no nodal involvement, even in medullary carcinoma, 90% cure rate you can achieve. But if it is recurrent, it will be less than 40%. So many people will do prophylactically at least one side of neck dissection where the medullary carcinoma lesion is there. If the nodule is on right side, right neck dissection. Nodule is left side, left neck dissection. In addition to central compartment neck dissection. Or sometimes you do central compartment neck dissection. The central compartment neck dissection, one side nodes are positive, that side lateral nodes you can remove. You should be little aggressive in doing nodal dissection in medullary carcinoma thyroid. How will you do nodal dissection? It's beyond this topic. We'll discuss in some other day. And medullary, and after the surgery, after curing the disease by surgery, radiation ablation if necessary, IM31, TSH suppression, which is not necessary in medullary. In medullary carcinoma, only replacement dose of levothyroxine enough. You need not suppress the TSH. So how will you follow up? You can follow up by doing thyroglobulin and anti-thyroglobulin antibody and TSH continuously every 3 months for first year, then every 6 months for second year, then annually. Ultrasound neck you can do if there is suspicion. But usually CT scan, PET scan, DOTA scan, all these things will. And for medullary carcinoma, you can assess calcitonin, which is a very important marker, and serum carcinoembryonic antigen, CEA. These two you can do for medullary carcinoma thyroid. So you can follow up with these tumor markers, ultrasound neck, and if needed, localized CT scan or MRI. If the patient is having some central nervous system problem, you can do MRI brain or MRI spine. This is for follow-up. There is an entity called prophylactic thyroidectomy. Because no thyroid cancer, but even then I will do prophylactic thyroidectomy. Marumun Kapom. When you will do, if the patient is having multiple endocrine neoplasia. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the experience is more for 1 and 2. Then you can do prophylactic total thyroidectomy to prevent occurrence of cancer, thyroid cancer. Now they say in all medullary cancer, the patient you should subject to RET oncogene mutation. If it is positive, then you should subject all family members to RET oncogene mutation, because if the patient is sporadic case, like no other family member is having, is a sporadic mutation, or it is Mendelian transmission, we don't know. He may be an index case of familial disease. So now the recommendation is to RET mutation analysis for all medullary carcinoma thyroid patients. So, by the way, by any investigation, if you find out to be multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome, you can do prophylactic total thyroidectomy. That is for MEN1 and MEN2A, which are less aggressive. You can do the prophylactic surgery at the age of 5. After 5, the child will be little grown up. Giving anesthesia is easy, operating is also easy. But if it is MEN type 2B, then as I already told you, even neonate can have medullary carcinoma thyroid. And if you forget to investigate for it, if you just overlook it, the child will have neck nodes and the life is out. The prognosis is very bad. So in MEN type 2B, even as soon as birth also, or after 30 days, when the child is stable, you can do prophylactic thyroidectomy to prevent thyroid cancer. And coming to recent advances, lot of tyrosine kinase inhibitors are coming. Metastatic disease, no hope. Earlier they used to give adriamycin chemotherapy, that is not that much useful. Now a lot of tyrosine kinase inhibitors are there. Sorafenib, that is useful for metastatic papillary carcinoma thyroid and follicular carcinoma thyroid and acute cancer. Vandatinib, sumatinib, many tyrosine kinase inhibitors are there. And there are some clinical trials analyzing mTOR inhibitors. All these things are recent advances in thyroid cancer. I hope it's over. It's a very, very long time. I have bored you around 1 hour 20 minutes. Sorry, I need feedback. If you feel the topic should not be this much long, I think we can cut down, but I don't think 1.5 hours is very long. Next topic, we will choose the topic, or we will break the topic into minor topics so that we will finish in 45 minutes and we will have time. Today also I am free. You can ask some questions if you want, or we can say goodbye to meet again. Today, after hearing me, or before that, any questions? No, sir, it's very urgent. You clear my doubt, you can ask.
Sir, when coming to the prognosis, how will you grade all the 3 carcinomas, follicular, papillary, and anaplastic? What is the prognosis in terms of, so which has a better prognosis, follicular, papillary, or anaplastic, sir?
Actually, I have omitted a small topic, prognostic scores of thyroid malignancies. I told you all thyroid cancers like papillary cancer, follicular cancer, Hurthle cell cancer, these are all well differentiated thyroid cancers. Well differentiated. Anaplastic is poorly differentiated. Medullary carcinoma is also well differentiated but aggressive nature. And lymphoma, the prognosis is different. Number 1. There are some criteria, AMES criteria, AGES criteria, and MASIS criteria. AGES, AGES criteria. There, A for age, G for grade, E for extent, and S for size. Age less than both sex less than 40 years, more than 40 years. It's old one. Now they revised to 55 years, but it's old one. So age is less than 40 years, more than 40 years. Grade. So they age they divided by they multiply age multiplied by 0.5. No, sorry, 0.05. Age multiplied by 0.05. You take the value. And if it is low grade, add 1. If it is high grade, add 1. Age, grade, and if it is extrathyroidal, again another add 1. I think and this one you multiply by 0.2, that is size. You add all these 4, you will get the age score. Again I repeat, age multiplied by A for age multiplied by 0.05. Grade, if it is high grade, you add 1 point. And extent, metastatic, extrathyroidal, you add 1. And size multiplied by 0.2. If you add all these things, you will get age criteria. And AMIS is age, metastasis, extent, and size. There the age is beyond 45 or less than 45. And one other MASIS criteria is there, where metastasis, A for adequateness of surgery, C for forgotten, I for infiltration, and S for size. That is MASIS criteria. In the MASIS criteria, if they say the criteria, the number comes less than 6, it is good prognosis. If it is MASIS criteria belongs to Mayo Clinic. They follow for many years. You need not follow AGC, AMES, MASIS criteria, various institutions, the institutions prognostic criteria. If you want, you can follow. So if it is MASIS criteria 6 and less, means it is very good prognosis. Patient will live for 90% and more, they will live for 10 years or more. If it is 6 to 8, intermediate prognosis. If it is more than 8, bad prognosis. But usually, I told you, stage 1 is non-metastatic cancer of anything in less than 55 years old age. And stage 2 is metastatic. Accordingly, the prognosis will be there. Beyond 55, it is, I told you, all this stage. So usually thyroid cancers are there diagnosed early. And majority of them, 95% of them, are well differentiated. So thyroid cancer prognosis is excellent usually. Unless the patient comes to, even with metastatic patient, I am having a policeman. Actually, it's a cancer couple. Wife was operated for cancer breast and husband was having metastatic cancer thyroid. He's a policeman, retired. At presentation, he was breathless, multiple lung secondaries. Even though he's alive, beyond 1 year. Even with metastasis, people will be alive. So good prognosis. Am I clear?
Medusane, it's actually an initiative taken by all of our by medical students like us, so that in order to create a confluence of medical lectures from top faculties from various medical colleges. So with a noble motive of creating a library of medical lectures for medical students who are not able to afford online educational apps for their exam preparation, sir. So we basically started Medusane during this lockdown period. So we are now we are actually very proud to say that we almost have 2,800 students who they've subscribed to our channel, and they are actually eagerly waiting to listen to all of the lectures of all the esteemed professors like you, sir. So so we have linked students from various medical colleges as well, and so that we could pass on the lectures to every student in the state, sir. So this is just a it is just a student initiated program, and it's a non-profit work. So with a keen motive of providing valuable content to every group of medicos, sir. So
it's a wonderful
recent-
initiative. No, it's a wonderful initiative. That is why I was very elaborate and comprehensive. You will be surprised to know some of my MCH students are also there here in the Zoom meeting. They are also here, so I was very extensive. It is not, this extensive may not be necessary for undergraduate level, but if someone, it is a treasure, you know. Like I will not be, it will be boring for me to speak on thyroid cancer for another 5 years. So you can have 2-3 lectures on thyroid cancer, and if you hear it, most of the points will be covered. So since the intention is to create a library, I was this much elaborate on thyroid cancer. Otherwise, I would not have bored this much. It's a very good, wonderful initiative. I think after some time, you will be having a wonderful library at your disposal. And since it is a non-profit thing, I eagerly accepted. Usually, my MCH PGs will be thinking this man is not teaching us at there in hospital. I am little lazy fellow. I will not accept for any classes that easily. But since I felt it's a wonderful initiative by UG students of self-financing medical colleges, and it's going to serve as a digital library, I accepted. And Raghunandan is pestering me for the past 2 weeks. Okay, it's a good initiative. Congratulations. I will be a little bit try to be jovial next time.